Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very, very special session of ZoomIn. It's a ZoomIn 89, so a very warm welcome to all of you on our virtual platform. And we have two very interesting speakers, guests, but they are. I can't call them guests because they are not guests. They are from amongst us. So a very warm welcome to you, Mr.
I'm on
Chib
it.
and Dr. Vohra. Welcome to ZoomIn 89. Um, the evening is going to unfold in many an interesting way because what we are talking about today is travel, about adventure and exploring, and we can do all that sitting in the comfort of a room. And we'll be seeing new places, finding out about new animals, understanding a bit more about the nature, and we are going to go on this excursion which will take us to different parts of the world. And we are very, very fortunate to have Mrs. Chib and Dr. Vohra with us this evening to take us on that journey. Mrs. Chib, most of you all recognize her, know her, and the same with Dr. Vohra. Mrs. Chib started the book club in the Vasant Vihar Club, and she has been long associated with. She's been long associated with many events and literary evenings for the Vasant Vihar Club. She has traveled the world herself, so we are going to have her insight about what she does. And she's been a source of inspiration to many of us here. And, as a teacher, as a friend, as a guide, as a mentor. So welcome to Zoom in this evening, Mrs. Chib. Dr. Vohra, again, most of you know him. He started his career as a journalist with the Times of India, and then he went on to become the editor of Sunday Times. He left all of this because he wanted to write books. He wanted to do work with the environment, and he has established an NGO called Development Research and Action Group, which is called DRAG, in 1988, and he's been working with the tribals in Maharashtra since then with them. Since DRAG has been set up, DRAG has also set up an organic farm in Haryana and has a school for deprived children from the economically weaker section, and they have a skill development center as well. So welcome to this evening's session, Dr. Vohra. But before we start the talk, I'm going to be sharing some photos which Dr. Vohra has shared with us. So just bear with me for a minute while I put it on.
These are photos that have been taken by my
such beautiful photos.
Yeah, Priya Sen has taken these shots.
Too quickly. Too quickly.
They're too fast. You can hardly see them.
No, I'm just showing them to you. Just bear with me for a minute, please. Yeah.
But you're making them too fast. They're like stamps.
Okay.
These are better size.
So these are the Galapagos Islands. These shots are from the Galapagos, showing this huge cactus with Gautam next to it, all small. This is an iguana. It's a massive size. These are known as Los Tuneles. This is the area known as Los Tuneles, and it is made from volcanic rock.
This is Galapagos.
And it is very spiky. This is all Galapagos. These are known as frigate birds, which are typical of the area. This is New Year's Eve in Santa Cruz Island, when
Galapagos.
When they burn everything that is negative and welcome the new year.
And this is Darwin, who went and opened up the Galapagos. You said the origin of the species. This is Darwin's statue in Galapagos.
Wow.
Great similarity.
Yeah, with you, Patricia. This is the blue-footed booby, but this is a young one, so his foot is not yet blue. As soon as he grows up, he'll have blue feet.
Turquoise, absolutely.
Turquoise, yeah.
Hmm.
But they're known as blue-footed boobies. This is on the Pacific.
I'm going to scroll them quickly, otherwise we'll be looking here about your travels, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. This is a giant tortoise, as big as a house. This is again in, here we are in the Arctic.
Sorry, this is the tortoise, yeah.
Sorry, Iceland with the geezer. This is the Galapagos is known for the turtle. That's the name.
This is Iceland.
No, that's Greenland.
Greenland.
Greenland. This is Iceland.
This is Nuuk, the capital of
Greenland.
Greenland.
There are these icebergs, several miles long.
This is a glacier.
Glacier, icebergs. They're making bread.
So since there's hot vapor coming from the ground, they were actually baking bread. So they leave it in there for several hours, and then they come out with this beautiful bread which we ate.
Wow, how interesting.
More than beautiful, it was very tasty.
Very tasty.
It was not particularly beautiful.
Okay.
I think it was.
There you are. This is
an iceberg.
iceberg in the Arctic region.
Yeah.
Disappearing by the minute.
Right.
Yes, because of climate change, global climate change.
This is in Iceland. It is a very, very big waterfall, which in fact was saved by this one woman, because otherwise they were going to make it industrial, and she fought and she saved it. These are known as ice flows in front, the glaciers at the back, and ice flows. This is again double again.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It looks nice.
Okay. Anyway.
Very beautiful. The photographs have all been taken by my colleague Priya, my travel companion.
Photos, wonderful photos, and lots of them. So yeah, and there are some repeats. So that's Priya for the audience.
The Arctic Circle. This photo we've climbed up and it's on the Arctic.
We are in the Arctic Circle there.
Oh,
That's not the Arctic
we've jumped to
Circle.
Argentina. These are the Iguazu Falls in Argentina, which are supposed to be bigger than the Niagara Falls.
They're not.
Beautiful.
Okay, this is back to Rio de Janeiro. We had gone up to the statue of Christ the Redeemer. And from there, there's this view of something called Sugar Loaf Mountain. And, Brazil exported sugar. And so this is the shape of the sugar that was exported like a loaf. So anyway, it is known as Sugar Loaf Mountain. And these are all the people, the tourists who were there.
Okay.
This is Clipper, and this is an Icelandic artist whose work we admire. It doesn't matter. They're in different turns. This is in one of those
Sao Paulo.
Yeah, the streets.
Graffiti Street.
Graffiti Street. This is Ringo Starr being kissed by
Pele.
Pele, or is it Pele kissing Ringo Starr? We don't know. Who took the lead? We have yet to find out.
Okay.
This is the Amazon forest. You see, we thought we'll be crushing through a lot of undergrowth. All the forest is in water. That's the difference between the forest in the Amazon and the forest elsewhere. All of these growing in trees. I don't know why the tree roots don't rot. This is Christ the Redeemer, Rio.
With this image, I'm going to stop the slideshow. We will see some of the photos a bit later. And we are going to get Mrs. Chib to speak to you about your travel and the beautiful things which you have seen on your travels. Mrs. Chib, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjana. And thank you for the warm welcome that you said, which I don't think I deserve. But anyway, it's nice to hear that. So I've known Deepak for ages, and also not ages, but for quite a few years. He was the one actually who sort of encouraged me to open the book club, and that's he and Mr. Deesh, Krishan Deesh, many of you would know. So they were the ones who encouraged me to start the bookshop, book club, which we did and which was always very successful. But during all this time, I never knew this part of his personality, that he was I knew every year he went for a holiday, but this adventure, everyone, goes for a holiday, but people travel. People would ask me when I tell them my husband was in foreign service and I was out, you must have seen half the world, which I certainly haven't, but still I would say yes. For us, you see, it was going from one country to the other every 3 years, setting up house. It was usual thing. And we saw things for 15 days, went here or there, saw the thing in that particular country. But with Gautam, when he said he's going on a holiday, I never thought what it was. But looking at his book, I've been absolutely fascinated. And I never thought that this sort of book would be interesting. But it was, Gautam, I've read it, entire book.
I'm delighted to hear that.
It's also written page by page. It's a diary. So first I thought, how can a diary be so interesting? But it was that which has made it interesting, because I think he's written it down every day about what they've done. So they've little snippets here, things there, which made it very, very interesting. So, but I want to ask you, Gautam, first of all, where did you get this? Have you inherited it, or was it from your parents, or what, this penchant for traveling and adventure? Not just traveling. Travel, of course, you had done. You had seen Europe and you had lived there, so all that you knew. But what was it, going to all these exotic places?
Well, I think my father was very fond of travel. And even when we were in places, when he was based in Geneva, he was in the United Nations Conference for Trade and Development. He used to take us to the most unusual places. It was not Europe. We never visited Europe because most of us had seen Europe in several ways. I was in university in England, and I was traveling in Europe with him. I had done hitchhiking many years ago from St. Stephen's College to the Middle East and through Europe. So Europe and America, the West, one knew. So when I got a chance, and when one had some little money saved up, and it's only at this stage when you have some money saved up, I thought I will see those parts of the world that were denied us. Therefore, places like the Arctic, the Galapagos, where Darwin went and invented his thesis, the Amazon forest, all those came to mind, and one of the more remote regions. So that's how we started, and that's how we got into it.
Well, you was actually chasing Darwin's dream, footsteps. You were following his footsteps. And he, of course, must have gone there knowing about the beautiful sea life that was there, which I think that was where the evolution started.
Right.
And now tell us about some of the animals that you've seen there, because it seems to be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
The sort of animals that you see, but the risks that you took. You said that you were snorkeling when you saw a shark. Now, if I saw a shark, I think I would run miles away from there, because if anyone has seen the film Jaws, you would run away from it. But you were the one who dived in it and wanted to see. What was it that you saw? And
well, I wouldn't say I took a risk. We were in the hands of a guide. And these people take out tourists to these unusual corners where sharks live. He took us to an area where baby sharks, white-finned baby sharks were living. So when we dived in with him, there were 6 or 7 of us, not just me. And he took us to their home, and they were frolicking about right deep underneath, very harmless and very pleasant. So one was not afraid. I was not taking a risk. Jaan hame bhi pyari hai. So in that sense, there was no risk. But you're right. The animal life in the Galapagos, like the giant turtle, I think we saw a shot of it. And the amazing bird life and the finches, all kinds of other animals, and Priya may remember some, were just enormous. Iguanas, every,
Huge ones.
you just wander down the street, you see an iguana crossing, you can see them crossing over, and everyone stops their cars. There is a certain total love for the animals. The animals can come and brush aside and touch you, but you're not supposed to touch the animal. These are rules that they automatically follow. At one time, they had introduced, Galapagos had introduced, the Ecuador government had introduced, Galapagos comes under Ecuador government, and the islands are off Ecuador, the western coast of Ecuador. They had introduced goats, and the goats ate up all the grass and all the vegetation. So they then removed the goats. So, you have to be proactive. This is what one learns. But whenever we went anywhere, whether we went to this island or St. Plazas or this or that, they took $100 from us. They charge you a pretty big penny, $50, $100 every time. So that's how they're able to preserve their environment. That's why all the animals are safe. And you begin to relate to them in a very different way. They don't run away from you. Whether there is a tortoise or whether is any number of birds used to come and settle down with us. I mean, one finch who was sitting on my shoulder was pecking at me, and my friend said, "Don't let her kiss you so much." So these kind of things, they're very friendly, and that's because they look after their animals.
But what about these? Did you go deep enough snorkeling, and did you see the really colorful little fish and all that also?
Not only turtles, yes, fish, a huge number of, but the vegetation was so striking. And the color was in the vegetation apart from the animals. And the turtle came, and a huge thing just stood next to me and poked his nose, and very friendly, not at all threatening. And the underground life, you see movies, and I said, my God, this is what I've been seeing in movies. It's the richness,
exactly.
The color and the beauty was stunning.
Let's move to the rainforest. As a geography teacher, I was always fascinated by this because rainforest thing, because the way these trees grow and how tall they are and all. But of course, even then, I wouldn't have ventured into the rainforest, knowing how many animals and insects and all would be there. But what did impress you in the rainforest thing? We saw just now the trees, which look absolutely magnificent over there.
Yeah.
But what else was there?
Yeah. What surprised me was that when they said the Amazon forest, I thought there would be a huge undergrowth, and that trampling through the undergrowth would be very, very tough. But we found that this Amazon rainforest, and it drizzles all the time in Amazon.
Yeah, it would rain.
Every day it is drizzling. So that is why these forests survive. But at the same time, since all the trees and their roots are in water, they are not. It's not undergrowth. There's no undergrowth. They're all in water. There are 6,000 varieties of trees in the Amazon. Europe has 50 varieties. To contrast it, you get an idea. There are 6,000 varieties of trees, and they're all tarring. So no one has touched them. The government doesn't allow you, and they're pristine, preserved. And in that sense, you don't see very much life on land. You see a lot of life under the sea, huge dolphins and those animals, sharks, caimans. But basically, you see life on trees. For instance, there were very small insects, all kinds of ants. There were anthills, there were sponges, there were termites. You tap the tree and the termites would spread all over. So it was a very different kind of experience. You were not seeing tigers and lions running through the undergrowth because there was no undergrowth. They were all in water. And the trees were magnificent. As I said, there are 6,000 varieties of trees in the Amazon. Europe has 50.
Yeah. That, of course, is amazing. But of course, one wouldn't have expected tigers anyway over there. The ants and the termites, I think you got it because you said that by the time you left, you had fever. So no wonder you had fever with all these ants and mosquitoes and all sorts of insects over there. No wonder that you had that. But tell me, you have given, it's a sort of you have said that Brazil has done more for its indigenous population than USA and other Latin American countries. So what will you tell about this?
Well, we were taken to an Indian village. And
by
when
Indian, what do you mean? I hope people don't think it is the Indian Indians.
Well, they call the American Indians,
Yeah.
the indigenous people. And some people say they came from North America. Other people say they came from Australia. One doesn't know what is their origin. But the indigenous inhabitants are, if you like, you could call them American Indians. And we went to one of these villages. And, they had every facility you can think of. They had satellite television. They had all health facilities. Schools were being run immaculately. There were teachers. It is all in the middle of a forest, all in the center of heart of the forest. It was, these are isolated communities, but the facilities of modern living were all being provided to them. And of course, once when the function was over, they called the children to sing. And once the singing was over, again, I was impressed. The hat was passed around and everyone was generous. And since I run an NGO, I said, my God, these guys are smart. Why don't we, when tourists visit us, get the children to sing and pass the hat around? People just poured in the money. The moolah came in easy.
That's quite right. And there are lots of Japanese there also, I believe. There are a lot of Japanese who have sort of at one time migrated.
You see, because to run the plantations, they first got Negroes, but you were not getting blacks from Africa. It was not easy. So then they began to get Japanese and other colonies. And therefore you
use their knowledge, especially with fruit trees.
Yeah.
They didn't get Japanese labor. They got them as scientists to help with that.
Well, there is a difference of opinion between my colleague Priya. She says they got them as people with knowledge, with different skills. From what I have written and what I have documented, they needed labor. So that's how the Japanese came. Of course, Japanese introduced their own culture. Yeah, they introduced their own culture and they grew a lot of fruit trees. So, that's how they got a different, there's a Japanese colony, there's an Italian sector. They have all these areas and they have all flourished, these different communities, and live very well.
But tell me, I don't think you like the food over there, the food that you ate, because you have written there that the beef was unchewable, the chicken was too greasy, the pork was all right, not so bad.
Well, I will ask my colleague Priya to talk about the food, but it's just maybe just that particular restaurant, these things were not particular. I enjoyed the food. I loved the food. Priya, do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I believe you taste everything and anything that is laid on the table. Very brave of you, to go and taste absolutely everything. But also I believe that in your book only I've read that there is lots of varieties of trees, as you mentioned, and one of them is called the wick tree, from where wicks is made. That's what you were...
Yes, of course, that is there. But I was just going to ask Priya to talk about the food you were talking about.
No, so then the main thing they eat is beef and meat. So they came to the table with these huge skewers of meat, and they would slice the meat and then put it on your plate. And they would go from one table to all different types of meat. So that the main thing was just meat. Vegetables.
Yes. Meat, no vegetables.
Yeah. No, you could add some vegetables just to balance the flavor, but basically every type of meat, and they had it all, and they were very generous. All the time.
Is it the beef that is locally produced, or they are Argentine?
It's locally produced.
In the world is their neighbor, so they would probably be getting from there.
It is possible, but as far as I know, this is locally produced.
Locally produced. And shall we move from here to move into the barber's footsteps now?
Yeah, okay.
So, of course, there you went to Kazakhstan and a few other places, but I don't think you were terribly impressed by them, except for the fruit. I don't think the scenery or anything was very special over there.
Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan has always been a central area of excitement for people like us. Mainly because, the Mughals came from there.
Right.
And Babar, I see my friend Anil is around.
What's happened now?
Maybe I think the electricity may have gone off.
Uh,
Why don't I show some of the pictures in the meantime?
yeah,
Till they
show
come.
some of those trees that you had, you know, the Amazon forest, rainforest trees, they are really,
So I think this is from the Amazon.
no, I don't know. No, this looks more like Africa to me, but if you, this one here,
This is not, this is all Africa, right?
this is all Africa. This is, I don't think is written about this in the book, but yeah,
Okay.
you are slowly approaching there though. I think these are the first one right now that we see at the bottom.
You were looking for trees. 1 second, I'll just come to them.
The very tall ones, and part of it, them are growing in the water also.
Yeah. This looks like. There are so many, it's difficult to pick and choose. And such interesting stories behind these. Okay. We were looking for trees.
Yeah, you just passed them. Yeah, this is it. Just before that, these are the trees. These are, you see, they are, as he said, they are growing in water. I mean, it's an amazing thing. I don't think there is anything like that in the world anywhere else. I believe they used to be in Malaysia.
Right.
Also, they had the rainforest because they are also in the equator and the equatorial. But most of them has been cut off, and there are no more like that now. So it's gone. But these are perhaps the only natural ones that are there, and it's. But I think it requires some courage to go into. I wonder how they went through. Maybe by boats or something,
Probably they did. I
because
think,
it's all.
yeah. I think this is I thought this was a very interesting photograph. Let me share that with you.
Yeah.
Let's see if people want to put in the chat what they see in this photograph. I found this to be an interesting photo. So if you want to put it in chat, we can have a look. Or if you want to unmute yourself till we have Dr. Vohra join us again, we can try and.
Yeah, we
I found he's gone halfway across the world, but he's not forgotten to take his Bata ka chappals.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
That
But
was very, very interesting.
But must be warm over there to have done this, because after, in fact, he went to Galapagos, the islands, that year, because the date he has written 2016 in June. But and lot of his travels have been in the southern hemisphere. So when he goes in June, it should be winter there, but it seems to be quite warm. But after this, in the winter of 2016, he has gone to the Arctic. And there, of course, it was very, very cold. Maybe we should ask him what has happened. Shall I call him, Sanjana, and check up with him?
I don't get this, yeah.
I guessed right, and the electricity has gone off. So they are joining through a different device. Meanwhile, let's see what photos we have here. Would you like to take a guess of where this is, Padmaji, since you've read the book? Do you think this is mentioned in the book, or being yourself? Oh, we have Gautam Vohra back here again.
Yeah, okay. Can you see us?
Just a moment. Yes, we can. Let me just pin you. There. Okay. We can see you now.
So,
We are all,
Go ahead. Sorry for the technical glitch.
this electricity went off.
yeah, if we sort of, Sanjana guessed as much, that the electricity went off. So has it come back, or are you
Yeah,
on
yeah, we're
another
on. I
device?
can see you. I suppose you can see me too.
Yeah, we can see you quite clearly. Okay, tell me something about, if we move on from this. Of course, as I said, you saw must have seen a lot of fruit there. I remember going to Afghanistan, for example,
Right.
in the, must have been in when we were posted in Islamabad. We
Yeah.
went in the 70s, and I was amazed by the amount of food available over there, and at such cheap rates. I don't know whether it's now, and all the fruit that we people love in
Yeah.
the summer. So you write about the same thing, and they call it the same. Kurmani, they call it
Right.
Kurbani, and
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
the same names are given. So
Yeah.
we either got it from them or whatever it is, it's there. But now let's move on to the other part, that the Armenia and Georgia, and what would you like to tell us about them?
Well, you know,
Azerbaijan.
these countries, Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is, of course, 85% Muslim, but these other two countries claim to be the first
Christian.
set of countries where Christianity was born. They say.
Oh,
I think the electricity must have come now, or what is it again?
Yeah, probably the gener.
Yeah.
I think probably the generator must have switched off or switched on. Okay, there are some more photos. Maybe I can just share them.
For a
Um,
little bit, I will tell about the Armenians, what he has written.
please go
That
ahead.
you see, the Armenians are not Catholic, but they are the ones original. They call themselves, at least that is what they say, that the Christianity came from there, from the Armenians, and they are apostolic, less sort of rigid than Christians are. I think we have a lot of Armenians in India also. Maybe in the southern part of India we do have, and their churches are much simpler. They are not like Catholic churches, very elaborate and all. They are rather simple churches, and one, but they say, the Armenians claim, that's why I got this thing, that the labor that was used for building Taj Mahal came from Armenia, and that the Mumtaz Mahal herself was an Armenian. So of
Oh,
course, I mean, people joke about it, and they say that amongst the Russians, they say that the Armenians always say that everything happened first in Armenia. So that's how they'll do. But in any case, I mean, the Armenians, they are a part of the Indo-Aryan group, and it is one of the oldest languages. It does not like Russian or anything, it is quite different. But they say the first Christian church was built in 700 AD in Armenia, and it is one of the oldest Armenian churches. And so, of course, after that, they go on and they visit the other places also. But um, what interested me in this thing was that they had, I think in Azerbaijan, they have what they call a tash. And that atash is actually like our, they, um, it is a fire tower. And this fire tower is like what the Parsis have, something like that. And there is some even Hindu influence there and all, and Muslim and all that. But they have this like worshipping fire and all that. So it is there that they are going.
it is how interesting that when one is traveling, one can find many similarities in spite of there being so many differences between nature, between people, between culture,
Yeah. Now,
food.
here he has written that they were at the Burning Mountain, about 20 kilometers from Baku. This is a unique site of Azerbaijan, and no other country can boast of it except Turkey and perhaps other countries. That there are tongues of flame gushing out from the mountain. These appeared 3,000 years ago in various parts of the mountain. Why? They don't know. Too much gas in the ground erupting, and because of the oxygen in the atmosphere bursting into flames. Hitler wanted to take over this place. As Azerbaijani, oil is a vital source of energy to the country and a huge source of revenue. So this is what he wanted to take, but the government did all it could to hide the flames from Hitler's planes spotting them. Water and sand were poured on them, but this did not work. Luckily, the German planes never got to this place. Now, at the fire temple, the Atash Ga. Atash is Persian for fire, and Ga means house. So this was the explanation that was given to them. So this is, he says that it was a Zoroastrian fire temple. But some others said, some of the other guides or the other people said that no, this is a Hindu temple. This is, and in fact, he said that in one place, it is written over there, there is a write-up that is Atashgarh temple was mainly used by Indian fire worshippers, but it has definitely Zoroastrian features. And in one of the rooms, Om was being chanted. So, I mean, there is, even though Azerbaijanis are 80% are Muslims, but I mean, it was.
So is this the country which you have visited yourself, Mrs. Chib?
No, I haven't. I've never been to Azerbaijan and none of these countries.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I read in his book, and Azerbaijan, of course, one always thought of it as a Muslim country where 80% are Muslim, but they don't follow the Muslim laws. Like they don't have 4 wives, he said. They are not doing with. Tell him if he can, I mean, if Gautam can be on his phone, have the Zoom on his
I
phone.
will just show some pictures in the meantime because there are some lovely photos. Let me just open that. And I'm sure they'll be able to. Oops. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second. This we had seen. I think this is. Is that too small? 1 second.
Yeah, it's Papua New Guinea, he says.
Okay.
But this one seems different. I think that is from.
I just want to.
They must be the fruits that he has.
He spoke about this one? Probably. Does that look like lychee? But it's not lychee. I think it's something.
No, this one is definitely dates.
Dates.
These are the dates, yeah. I've seen lots of these dates. Many of them grew in my garden in Iraq. About 20 varieties used to grow in my own garden in Iraq. So these are definitely dates. This I don't know where it is, but this is probably Mali, which hasn't written about that in this book. But
It's a day for technical glitches. This is the cover of the book. Perhaps if you show the cover of the book, they may. You're on mute, Mrs. Chib. Okay. So it's interesting to see these pictures. Viewers, if you would like to unmute yourself and say something.
he says they is on the phone, so he's doing it from the phone. So I don't know if you could connect with him.
I did. I spoke.
Okay.
Okay. So these were some more of the pictures. I'm going to stop sharing and hope they can join us back. So tell us a little bit about your travels. Which has been your most fascinating place or your favorite place?
You're asking me?
Yes, since you're there right now and I'm sitting here.
For me, every place was fascinating, including the difficult ones, because we were in difficult places like Pakistan twice, where we were, when the war was taking place. We seem to have gone. Then we were in Iraq when war was taking place. But you see, if we set up home as a diplomat, I mean, my own and my husband's idea was to be friendly with the local people and the diplomats and all. and you make a home. And unless you actually feel at home, you can't be comfortable. So, I mean, for me, they were every place, even Pakistan, where we faced so much of hostility, I thought there were some good points. I found people who were quite nice. There were people like ordinary people like fruit sellers and all. When we were leaving after the war, they came to me and said, uh, they always called me Begum Saab there, and they said, आपको माफ कर देना अगर कोई गलती हुई हो और फिर वापस आना. So you see, you found that the people are everywhere good if you are good to them. But of course, if you ask my favorite posting, I think the one that I enjoyed the most, perhaps one was United States, because I said, let me do something useful. So I joined the Washington University there as a student also. So I sort of did this is Priya's iPhone, so I think he will be coming in. So I like, and then Switzerland, of course, is so beautiful that you have to like it.
Oops. Um,
Though we can't see you, but we can hear you perhaps. Come on.
okay. Um,
Can you
I,
hear us, Gautam?
today is a day for technical glitches. So, what did you study while you were in the US?
I studied on teaching. You know, I did the sort of learning and development of
Oh,
the child and teaching, not just child psychology, but it was human sort of development and learning and teaching and all. So
mm.
it was a lot of fun. But at the same time, I mean, for example, in Egypt was fascinating with all the old things that you see, Luxor and Aswan. I think something where everyone should visit, where, you know, you go into the tombs. There he is. We can see you. Can you talk to us now, Gautam?
No, we can't hear you clearly, sadly.
Hmm.
I'll just call him and tell him to call.
Can you hear me now?
No, gobbling very badly.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better. It's better, but a little
Can
low.
you hear me now?
Yes, we
Turn
can.
down the volume.
Okay, that's
Let's talk about can you hear me? No, it's still bad.
Uh, Wrong day for this to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Which are some of the other places which Dr. Vohra mentions in his book, Mrs.
Well,
Chib?
the very
Send him a message, then he can reply. If you send him a message.
I think he's having network issues, so perhaps you can tell us some of the other places he visited. I'll in the meantime try and call him because it'll
yeah,
be
when
interesting.
he talks about, you see, he's talked another very interesting place that he visited was Iceland and all the Arctic areas. So it's Iceland, Greenland. These are the places, these two that he visited. So first of all, I mean, when the airport that they land as, according to the spelling, I would have called it Schiphol. It is S. How would you pronounce it? Schiphol airport. And I, of course, thought it was Schiphol, but it's actually Skiphol, which makes a sense because he said this is the center of the world in a way. If you look at the map, you will see that it is, on one side, if you cross, you go left. If you are facing, say, let us say, Iceland, on the left is Canada, then you go down, it will be America, of course, and if you turn left, it is Russia. So it is almost in the center of the world there is, and that's why they call it Schiphol. And of course, he talks about all the.
Hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Gautam, tell us about your adventures because the photographs also that you have are beautiful of Iceland and Greenland. That
You know, I'd been wanting to go to Iceland ever since I was a student. Since the age of 17, when I was in college in England, मैंने कहा यार Iceland जाना है. But every holiday, something or the other always happened. Once I got a chance, there was a beautiful monastery in Scotland called Benedictine monastery in a place called Elgin. One holiday I landed up there. Another holiday I had got involved with a lot of student revolutionaries. And that holiday during university time, I went off to Cuba. So one way or the other, Iceland got postponed. So from 17 to 70, when I became 70, I managed to go to Iceland. So, you know, when you go to Iceland, these are now Danish colonies. Iceland and Greenland are now part of Denmark. So you see, you have a same very European atmosphere. Of course, Greenland's Nuuk is a very small city, but Iceland is Iceland Reykjavik is a huge city and very European. So there's no difference. It's only when you get into the interior, when you get into a huge ice flows and you get into all these icebergs, that you get another world.
These are the ones that we saw, the icebergs and all that we saw earlier in the photographs. These are, yes.
Yeah.
So then go on. What about
the Northern Light, Dr. Vohra?
Huh?
Did you see the Northern Light when
Northern Lights are during the winter, during the winter months. We went there because we wanted in the summer, because you know, yeah, the land of the midnight sun. We went at that time. Northern Lights is in the winter period, and we didn't want to go at that time because it'd be, as it is, it's cold.
But even in the summer, Gautam, the midnight sun would have been there.
Yeah, in the sense that there was never any darkness. Any time of the day, it was daylight. And but any time of the night, it was daylight.
Then how do people sleep in all this?
I suppose they must be getting tired after 12 hours.
And there, of course, I found that you ate all sorts of things. I mean, one couldn't imagine reindeer, seal, whale. I mean, all sorts of things you ate. How was?
You know, mine is not a very refined taste, but I'm very, I think, adventurous. I try all kinds of things, and I gave everything a chance once. But I found all these whales and all very, very tough going. You know, you soon realize. I mean, the open platter, and you know, reindeer and elk were relatively okay, but some of these fish species, whales and those, chewing me lag jata time. I mean, it's not particularly tasty. But I wanted to try. So the idea of all this travel was that you have a shot. Yeah, let's see. Try new things.
What was it that impressed you most in, say, Greenland and all? Because what we have read in geography, we always call them Eskimos and the igloos.
Yes.
Did you see any igloos there, the snow houses and all?
No, igloos, no, but we met all the local people, and the local people are called Eskimos. In the old days, Eskimos were people, the local people were people, they were called Eskimos because they ate raw meat.
I
and
see.
This young girl who was our, our guide, she said, we don't mind being called Eskimos now. You know, it's not a term, it's not a pejorative term. And in that sense, Eskimos are, these are very small populations. They're also very well connected and very, either here.
And what do they call? But then, I mean, what is it? You said the people are called Inuits.
Yeah, that's another term for the tribal population. But
also for the tribal
Eskimos,
population.
Yeah,
but they are Eskimos, you mean them?
You see, because as I said, there's a European veneer, and the Europeans are really dominating that part of the world. And since it is a Danish colony, we did ask all these Danes who were there, what do you see in it? But apparently, I'm told both Iceland and Greenland are rich in minerals. You have to explore and check out. China has bought up half of these areas because it has Greenland and Iceland. It has, because the minerals are enormous.
Can I just intervene? Actually, Iceland, it's known for its geysers and its volcanoes.
Yeah.
So in fact,
tell us about those geysers and the volcanoes and the lava ash and the lava stone that you said that you can't even walk on. So tell us about that.
See, the geysers are everywhere. There's steam coming out from the ground everywhere. So you can see that, but it is also very, very, very green. So in fact, they don't spend on electricity because all the electricity comes from this hot water, which is
Thermal energy.
Thermal energy. So even their fruit or their vegetables are grown in greenhouses using the thermal energy. But as far as Greenland is concerned, that you don't have this thermal energy, but what you do have is that Greenland is very, very rich mineral-wise. So there are countries who have actually leased land, of which China is one, there's USA. Various countries have leased land in Greenland for these minerals.
But is it very green since they call it Greenland with the vegetation?
No, it is not. It is not.
Then why do they call it Greenland?
That's confused us as well, because it's basically icy waste. I mean, unless the lower part, the northern part is all icy. I mean, it's all.
Yeah, one would imagine that it would be icy, but I mean, to call it Greenland, one immediately feels that there would be a lot of greenery over there.
Right.
In fact, Iceland is very green. The areas of Iceland, where they leave their horses, they leave their cattle, roaming the hills completely free, and it's very green.
But what about, I mean, has the climate affected them, the warming part and all that, the glaciers, are they melting?
Yes.
Yes. Global warming is a reality. And as we said, when they took us to these glaciers and took us by boat, they said, and you know, as you go along in the water, there are huge chunks of ice, huge glaciers broken. You have to be very careful because any of these can. The host has asked you to start your video, huh?
Yeah, but I know, I mean, in Switzerland, there was a beautiful, I say it may be still there. There's a glacier called at Grindelwald. And we used to, every one who came and visited us there wanted to go there. And it really was beautiful. So we were there in the 80s, got back in the 90. Now, and it was really beautiful. In the summers, you could go, you had to climb a few steps and then they had a little ice tunnel, which you could actually go in and see the glaciers. That means that from the ground level, it would have been about, say, 10 feet high or maybe 15 feet high. And you could go over there and, you know, you could walk in, had a little bridge sort of thing. We often did that. But in the summer, little bit of drop waters, there was a little sort of lake, not a lake, but a sort of a depression there where the water would collect. And it was beautiful. One could sit around and even have a little picnic. But when I went in 2000, I don't know when it was, but must have been 2008 or 10, I don't know, don't remember the date. But we went there. I wanted to take my grandchildren there and show them there. You know, the glacier was nowhere. And we walked and walked. There was a sort of round circle. One would go on walk. I went there and I kept telling them little further, and there will be a glacier. But there was no glacier. And I found there was a little cubicle there where they said the tourist information and all. And then there I asked them. And she said, the glacier is right where you are standing. It is there. But now it is no longer 15
Exactly.
It has gone right up to, I don't know, 100 feet or so. She said, one had to climb 200 steps to see it now. The son and the two boys, they went. But they also climbed 100 steps, had a glimpse of it and came down. But earlier it was only about 20 steps. We could go up, go into the tunnel and come down. Because there was no longer that. So has it affected? Because what has it done to the carvings?
You see, the main point is this, that Europe, when it developed very fast. That means a lot of carbon emissions. A lot of carbon emission means a lot of heat and generated. So in that area, and Europe is, and they accept it. You know, Europeans say that it is their fault that they were so indifferent to the environment. To that extent, any country that is evolving and developing, it is bound to happen. The energy needs are such. And China has now become the most dynamic growth engine. But earlier on, it was Europe, and Greenland and Iceland are part of that continent. And therefore, that carbon emission did impact the glaciers, has impacted the life. And growth continues, but all these big white giants are melting. And that is the price that I think the whole of the world will have to pay. And we have to recognize the fact that unless we moderate our growth but it's such a difficult political decision. India, where 40% of the people are living below the poverty line, how can you stop growth? So if you need energy and we're not getting it from Russia, thank God we've not fought with Russia over Ukraine. What I'm trying to say is that they're giving us in our case, you can't take, it's a very difficult political decision to take to stop growth. It may not affect the middle class or upper middle class, but as I said, 40% of the people live below the poverty line in India, and you can't take a stand on that. Europe didn't take a stand, and it's burnt down its glaciers. It's gone.
So I think we've sort of finished our time.
Sure.
But if anyone would like to, I don't know, ask the question something if they have.
Yes, Anjana, I would love to
Sure.
ask.
Please go ahead, Mr. Bhalla. Of course, please go ahead. Please ask your question.
Gautam ji,
Anji.
you have covered underground undersea animals in detail. Can you share your views on the exotic birds, of which you are yourself is a bird lover, in all the 3 places you visited?
Well, the most unusual place in that respect was not so much the Amazon, because the Amazon were trees in sunk in water, and therefore what you saw basically were the little insects living on trees. They were birds, like what they call hoatzin and the screaming pelican, but we really didn't see very many. Screaming pelican is a bird in the Galapagos area, which announces to all the people in the jungle that someone has entered. And in that sense, we saw a lot of unusual wildlife in the Amazon, much more so in the Galapagos, and to some extent in some of the other areas. But it's the Amazon and the Galapagos Islands where there was a maximum, but Amazon was sunk in water. So you saw basically a lot of sea life, not so many of the exotic birds.
And out of the 3 places which you visited, which was more fascinating to you?
Now, this is a difficult question because each one has its own appeal. Galapagos is divided up into small islands, as names like Saint Plazas and very Indian sounding names that we find in Bombay.
Yes.
And each of those islands are volcanic rock, and life there can be very tough, and yet the beauty is amazing. Amazon, it becomes a very different world. It's a much richer world, but as I said, not undergrowth. The overgrowth is incredible. The tree species, you are just dazzled by the tree species. The vegetation, strong, straight, reaching for the sky, blocking out the sun. You have to be able to get off from what they call the clipper, the big boat, get into small boats of 8, 10 each. It was an odd gloom. There was no sunlight coming through. It was a very exotic and romantic world, and very exciting.
No sunlight, that's what makes the trees tall, Gautam. They go up.
Exactly.
They keep on climbing to reach the sun.
That's right.
They are aiming at the sun.
Yeah, they need the sunlight, so they're reaching out for it, and they keep growing.
Yes, so they are growing taller, and that's why they are so tall. Yes.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, my questions, my inquiry.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bhalla. Anybody else would like to ask any questions or make a comment or thus, please feel free to do that just now. Would you all like to see the photos once again now?
Radhika, I think, wants to ask a question.
I just,
sure.
Dr. Bhalla, I just wanted to ask you, they say so much about the rainforest being depleted these days, and you have said that they are looking after the environment there, which is completely different from what one hears and reads. So did you see any evidence of this depletion and gross, cutting down of trees and so on?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's what they're talking about these days.
That is happening. And, of course, as tourists, we won't be taken to those places. We'll be taken to the more pristine areas. But you're right. The rubber barons also, there was a lot of rubber in these areas. And all the rich people exploited the rubber. And therefore also came to be known as robber barons. So yes, the exploitation even now continues. And, the industry now is more modern industry. And they're using wood for their various other exploits. But as tourists, there are certain pristine areas. Brazil will get its tourism mainly because it has these pristine areas. And millions of tourists come mainly because of that. So some areas are kept pristine, and that's where we were. We were exposed to that. And it was what an experience.
If they don't,
Sorry.
Yes, if they don't conserve the environment, I mean, we won't have it. The same thing is happening in India.
Yeah.
So much of it is being destroyed.
But this is the argument I was trying to raise earlier: development versus environment. Where do you have to draw the line? When you have such a large population that is living under the poverty line, development under the political regime will always take priority. And in that sense, development can mean an extra use of the resources, natural resources, in which case natural resources suffer. But you're right, one feels sad, and I can totally sympathize with you that when such resources go, they're gone forever. Of course, there are man-made forests being created. For instance, in our NGO, we have created a man-made forest in Mangar village, Faridabad district. But that's a very different thing from something that is biodiverse and on its own. I mean, that's why you go to biodiversity park, Sanjana and others have gone. It's so rich. So many different organisms, so many different species. I mean, some that your eyes can't see, and they make all kinds of vegetation grow. You come to a Mangar forest in Faridabad district, it is also very rich. But the diversity, the infinite variety, that doesn't exist. We have grown the trees. We've made it totally a green patch, very beautiful. But it doesn't compare. If you just compare it with the biodiversity park in Vasant Vihar, it won't. Our farm will not compare. So in losing biodiversity, Brazil, the Galapagos, many other countries, they're losing a vital part. But then what do you do? It's a development between environment debate that's as old as the hills, and that will continue.
Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Gautam, you went to Yemen also, because I think there was a photograph Sanjana showed of those mud towers, those multi-story mud buildings.
I've been to Yemen, but not in the book. Those
it's
mud towers were where? Where were those? Mali. Those are Mali and Burkina Faso. Those structures made of mud, they were in West Africa. Mali, basically Mali and Burkina Faso, that area.
You went to Timbuktu?
We tried to. We were not allowed to go. We were not. That was in fact one of my great dreams. Name like Timbuktu, Casablanca, Copacabana. I was desperate to go, but they were not. They didn't allow us to go. We were in that country. But we were in the southern part. They didn't allow us to go to the north, which is where Timbuktu is.
Why? Was it unsafe?
Mali,
at
Mali.
that time?
It was in Mali.
In Mali, but was it unsafe at that time?
Yes.
They said,
Fighting going on.
you see all these African countries, there is always tribal warfare going on. But I'm sure we could have managed it. But they just had a blanket ban. They didn't want to take a risk.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have a question.
Sorry. Sorry.
Please go ahead.
No, I was just wanting to.
Please go ahead, Vinita ji.
He didn't complete what he was saying on Uzbekistan, because, as he said, every one of us has a fascination because, Babur and the Mughals came from there.
You see,
what was his take on Uzbekistan?
My main point about Uzbekistan was I wanted to see where Babur came from. And we went up to Tashkent, and then apart from Uzbekistan, we wanted to go to Kyrgyzstan and one or two other Central Asian republics. We went to Kyrgyzstan, but then at that time, my passport cover came off. So when the cover came off, we went to our embassy in Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek. That's the capital of Kyrgyzstan. And said, "Yaar, humko naya passport de de." And I think the embassy was shoddy in the extreme. They saw an Indian and they were totally unhelpful. They could recognize I was no barbarian out to fleece the country and kill the president. But the ambassador down the line, they were pathetic human beings. I'm sorry, I'm not impressed by them. They could have easily renewed my passport, checked me out in 3 minutes, but didn't. So as a result, I was not able to go back to Uzbekistan. I was in Kyrgyzstan, could not go, because that is where I wanted to also go to Bukhara, Samarkand. These are names that were in my mind from my father's time. My father was a historian before he joined the Indian civil service. But he loved these places. So, I was in a sense following the dreams that he had planted in my mind. And I felt very sad that I could not do it. And I think the pathetic nature of our Indian embassy, and I'm making a complaint, I know I shouldn't overdo it, but there it is. They really, I think I can't admire our foreign service people or whoever they were at that place.
Maybe we should, Sanjana, we should organize a trip to Uzbekistan for a group of Vasant Vihar residents who are interested.
Yes,
Not a bad idea.
I think that would be a very interesting trip because I would love to go there as well. So yes, why not? Let's do
We've
that.
already got a few people interested. I'm sure Mrs. Chib would love to come too.
Absolutely. I'm sure she will.
Yes. You haven't said anything about music because, again, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, music plays a very important role in people's lives there.
Music.
Is that just a hearsay?
Yeah, you're right. And one should get into the cultural aspect, but one is traveling and one has 10, 12 days. One can't really get deeper into their cultural life, though one would love to have.
Only food.
Food was
Gautam is not the
only
music
aspect
and
of culture
science
that one could take in.
That is the trouble. Give him books and give him other things, but music, I don't think is his cup of tea. That's what
I love music. I love music, but I'm not very refined. I cannot get into the classical level. Folk music, pop music, I love. But Indian classical, even Western classical, I'm not, I have to admit, I'm not sophisticated enough.
I will recommend the food in these Central Asian republics. The food was fantastic.
Yes. Maza aa gaya.
Very delicate, very beautiful. It's just gorgeous. I love the food.
What was the food? Naan and stuff like that?
No,
Naan
not
and
at
meat?
all. They had very delicate, they had mushrooms in vodka as a salad. But it was so subtle, the quantities of whatever vodka, whatever they put. And, I had a lot of vegetarian food because I got tired of meat. But the vegetarian food they have, like rice, there would be so many herbs and it would be cut, whatever the onions or whatever they cut were cut so delicately and it was just so tasty.
Okay.
With the vodka, it must have been Russian influence.
Yes, quite right. That's a good point.
I think there is always things which bind us together, and I guess travel is one thing which has brought us all together this evening. And I'm thankful to you, Dr. Vohra and Ms. Priya, for sharing your journey with us, your adventure, places that you've explored with us. And Mrs. Chib, thank you very much for highlighting and pointing to places which you thought were fascinating, and we surely found it fascinating too. Thank you.
Did really.
Thank you. Well done, Sanjana.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you,
I
Mrs.
never
Chib.
thought in the beginning that it would be interesting, but the diary that you have written, that was very interesting, going page by page.
Yeah,
So
lovely.
I read every page. I can tell you that.
Very happy, delighted to hear that.
I have a small question. I don't know if it's there time to ask. I mean, not a question, a request really.
Hi, Chib. Please go ahead.
So can we try and arrange another session physically with Dr. Vohra and Mrs. Chib? It would be so interesting, and to listen to them and to hear and to watch these things physically. That will be very, very interesting. I don't know if that's possible.
We'll keep that in mind, and
It's a good idea.
hopefully we'll be able to do that very soon.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Thank you for your suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. With that, I will bid you all good night and thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
And
Sanjana.
forward to seeing you next time.
And thank you for restarting Zoom,
Yes.
Sanjana. I'm
Yes.
very happy that you started and given this opportunity, which was very nice of you.
Lovely.
Anyway, very nice, Gautam. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
both. Thank you.
everyone.
Nice.
Goodbye.
Good.
Okay.
Very interesting evening.